As you know, that schedule is very busy. He's coming from another event, a roundtable, and he will be here very shortly. So I just want to take this opportunity again to thank you for coming, thank you for being patient, and thank you for your support. And he should be here shortly. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Minister Maria Newton Taban.
Good afternoon. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated.
Check, 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 check. Check. You guys getting me? You guys getting me? You got me? Got me? Is that clean? Clean? Hey, 1, 2.
Please welcome to the stage Senator Kevin Johnson.
Good afternoon again. Good afternoon, everybody. Everybody fired up? Ready to go? Great. You all that know me know I don't normally do a lot of endorsing, but when I do endorse, I take it very seriously. And so I have the pleasure this afternoon to introduce to you the person who I know will be the next president of the United States of America. And you that know me know that one thing that I'm very big on is experience. And I feel from the bottom of my heart that a lot of the problems we have today is that we have someone in the White House who lacks experience. So this election, I want you to make sure you understand and spread the word. This election is not about the past. It's not about what somebody might have done or said 40, 50 years ago. This election is about the future. The future of our great country. And we have before us a man who has worked hard on our behalf over the last several decades, most notably as our vice president, working side by side and hand in hand with President Barack Obama, the greatest president to ever serve this country. And so as I introduce the vice president, I'm going to keep my remarks very brief. I want you to know that what we need for this country is someone with a real vision. And I'm not going to read his vision. It's on our programs. And if you would look at it, it says Joe's Vision for America. And look at the part that's in bold print. Joe Biden is running for president to restore the soul of the nation, rebuild the backbone of America, the middle class, and unite the country to move beyond our current divisive, broken politics. Ladies and gentlemen, the next president of the United States of America, Vice President Joe Biden.
Hey, folks. Great to see you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. Nice start. Good to see you all. My mother would say, God love you for waiting. Folks, Kevin has become a good friend. State Senator Kevin knows, as he said, he doesn't endorse easily, and I was really flattered that he took the time to endorse me. And Representative Will Wheeler, who's here, I'm told that David Weeks is not attending today, but thanks for the passport coming in the region. You know, folks, I'll get right to it. Hey, Franny, how are you? See that guy back there? That's Franny Person, ran for the Congress up north. Used to run things for me. Now, I know you Clemson folks won't like it. We played in South Carolina at 298 as a starting tackle. Anyway, it's another deal. Good to see you, Franny. Hey, in 1968 was one of the most, in my view, tumultuous years in this nation's history. My only two political heroes were murdered, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert Kennedy. One killed in April and the other in June of that same year. My city of Wilmington, Delaware, like many other cities, was in flames. The National Guard was occupying my city, troops stationed on every street for 9 months with drawn bayonets. It was the longest period of martial law in American history since the Civil War. These two men, King and Kennedy, and those events, like so many of you, shaped much of my life. Civil rights, the Vietnam War, President Nixon's rampant abuse of power were all the reasons why I entered public life to begin with. That's why I have chosen at that time to lead a prestigious law firm that I had been hired by and become a public defender, because those people who needed the most help couldn't afford to be defended in those days. That's why I chose to run for the county council, to change the Democratic Party in my state, which was a Southern Democratic Party, to a mainstream Democratic Party devoted to women's rights, civil rights, and ending the war. And I also ran in the county because I wanted to combat the redlining that prevented and encouraged discriminatory housing and policies that persist in many places today. It's why, at the age of 29, before I was legally eligible to serve in the Senate, coming from a modest family, 3-bedroom house, 4 kids, a grandpa, mom and dad, decent neighborhood, but not any money, that I ran for the United States Senate. The joke used to be, I'm the first senator I ever knew, and in truth, I was. I ran to end the endless war in Vietnam, to fight for civil rights, and to hold a lawless president accountable. And many of my generation joined as well. I made the decision, like many of you have, to get off the sidelines, to get involved, to lead. At a distance, those decisions to get involved, to lead, seem simple, so simple to accomplish. You make no compromises. You work only with those with whom you agree. And you live in the world you want. But the reality, as you all know, is quite different. To get things done, you have to work with people who were elected long before you. And it requires some people who you have to engage with who don't see the world the way you see it. Some may be downright repugnant to everything you stand for. Sometimes it gets messy. But to adjust, you have to. And slowly but surely, you begin to make progress. To find common ground without yielding on principle. Accepting some compromise on things you don't support in order to get things that are really important done for your people. You work with people who may offend you. In my case, every fiber in my being was offended when I ran. I'm serious. To get things done for the greater good. You work in the world you inherit. You work in the world you've been given. Because otherwise, nothing gets done. For me, the world I was given in the United States Senate was full of segregationists. They held the most powerful positions in the Senate at the time. 8 members of the United States Senate, in fact, the day I entered, were signatories to the Southern Manifesto. 8. And they controlled almost all the major assignments. Everything they stood for offended me. They represented everything that I ran against. Would have been nice if the day Lyndon Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act, they and everything they stood for had been removed from the Senate and from the political landscape of America. But that's not the real world. So I took them on with allies like Teddy Kennedy and many others. And we kept winning. We won repeatedly, reauthorizing the Voting Rights Act. As a young chairman of that committee, we were able to reauthorize it multiple times. The 2 times that I did it, we extended it not for 5 years, but for 25 years. The last time the vote took place, we extended it for another 25 years, 98-0. Not one person voted against it, but it took time. I chose to work within the system to make it better, to get things done for the least among us. Was I wrong to do that? I don't think so. I do believe we have work to do, even with those who we find repugnant, to make our system of government to work for all of us. I believed then, and I believe now, and I know it can be done without compromising on your principles. Folks, now, was I wrong a few weeks ago to somehow give the impression to people that I was praising those men who I successfully opposed time and again? Well, yes, I was. I regret it. And I'm sorry for any of the pain or misconception they may have caused anybody. But should that misstep define 50 years of my record for fighting for civil rights, racial justice in this country? I hope not. I don't think so. That just isn't an honest assessment of my record. And I'm going to let my record and my character stand for itself and not be distorted or smeared. You know, America in 2019 is a very, very different place than the 1970s. And that's a good thing. I've witnessed an incredible amount of change in this nation. And I've worked to make that change happen. And yes, I've changed also. I'm not the same person who entered the Senate at age 29. I don't pretend to have gotten everything right. I don't pretend that none of my positions have changed. I've grown, and I think it's good to be able to grow, to progress. Flawed and imperfect like everyone else, I've made the best decisions I could at the moment those decisions had to be made. As I look back over my career, I'm reminded of that verse from the 1 Corinthians. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully. We never know enough. We never know enough. We are never without blind spots. We never know the future for sure. But if the choice is between doing nothing and acting, I've chosen to act. I carry a coin with me my best friend, my sister, gave me a long time ago. There's the prayer of serenity on it. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I mean it. I hope my long experience has brought me some wisdom. I know it's brought me a long record to defend, especially in the context of and history that are replaced by 30 and 60-second sound bites. I know my record comes with something else. A treasure trove of armies of opposition researchers in our party and the other party trying to weaponize my record and use it against me. Today I want to address some of those attacks. Statements and votes I made on busing in the 1970s have become an issue in this race. I know those speaking to the issue today are saying what I said back then. But the better answer is to get to the root cause of segregation. Discrimination in housing has been one of the most pernicious forms of racism that has taken hold in this country, wreaking havoc not only in education, but denying generation after generation of African Americans the ability to create and pass on wealth. When you have the same home in a white neighborhood and the exact same home in a black neighborhood, the value of the home in the black neighborhood has decreased significantly. So you're not able to borrow against it. You're not able to pass it on to your peers. You're not able to build wealth. That's why we need to insist that banks have to lend in every neighborhood. We have to go after predatory lenders, hold bank executives responsible for discriminatory practice that continue to this day. I don't believe a child should have to get on a bus to attend a good school. There should be first-rate schools of quality in every neighborhood in this nation. Especially in 2019 America. Folks, 12 years of education is not enough to compete in the 21st century. On that score, here's what I commit to you. First and foremost, I will name a Secretary of Education who is an educator. For real. Even if I didn't want to, my wife, who still teaches full-time, would not allow anything else. One who is committed to strengthening our public schools, proper pay for school teachers, promoting diversity among our teachers and administrators in every district. Second, I have proposed the biggest increase in federal resources to historically neglected and underfunded schools in the history of this nation. I proposed tripling Title I funding from $15 to $45 billion a year. No one else has even come close. I know some folks prefer to focus on the past, but I'm a candidate, as I've always been my whole life, about the future. I want to give every child in America the education they deserve, and we can have the capacity to do that. And folks, I will pursue a program for education that will be worthy of the legacy of a Sumter native, Mary McLeod Bethune, who was an educator in presidential advisor, began teaching, I'm told, a few blocks from here, not very far. Now, here's an often overlooked fact. You'll be hard-pressed to find a low-performing school in a high-income district. Public school. There's a direct correlation between family income and student achievement. So when my education secretary is working to implement programs I've just outlined, I'll be working across government lines to close the wealth gap. Folks, we have to raise the minimum wage to a livable wage. No one should be working full-time. No, and we can. It's got to be a minimum of $15 an hour nationally now. Secondly, I will initiate the largest infrastructure program in the nation's history. And by the way, I presided over the Recovery Act, signed to me. I wasn't always interested how President Obama, my buddy at States of the Union, would always surprise me. And my friend Joe's going to, He never told me what he was going to say to me before. Like, Joe's going to take this $89 billion Recovery Act. Sheriff Joe. I thought, holy, yeah. But he gave me the presidential authority to do it. I presided over a $100 billion increase in infrastructure at the time. We will increase that because we must to compete around the world. And part of that, part of that will be $100 billion for school construction and facilities that will significantly focus on the health and welfare of people in the schools, particularly in rural communities. There's another part of my long record that's being grossly misrepresented. The 1994 crime bill. There was a gigantic surge in violent crime and murder rates. But I understand why it's being misrepresented. In the 1980s and 1990s, violent crime was out of control. The crime bill was designed to deal with that problem. That's why it was supported overwhelmingly by the Democratic Party, by African American leaders all across the nation, including the majority of the Black caucus in the Congress. It worked in some areas, but it failed in others. Like every major change, you go back and you make it better. From Social Security on, it gets improved. The violent crime rate was cut in half in America. But It was opposed by Republicans, people like Mitch McConnell, not because they thought it was too tough, it's because they thought it was too soft. They felt it dedicated too much money to things like prevention. You guys in here all remember they had those prisoners dancing in tutus saying Biden wants to have after-school programs, Biden wants to have prevention programs. I also wrote into that law drug courts. Anyone can arrested for a drug problem because they're addicted should be going into diverted to a drug court, not into a prison system. They didn't like the fact that we removed mandatory minimums for first-time offenders. The bill had other things that mattered to me. It included my Violence Against Women Act, which I wrote. It included strengthening the Brady Bill on background checks, eliminated assault weapons, etc. But the bill also included things I didn't like. I didn't support the provision the president wanted and called 3 strikes and you're out. Didn't support it then, don't support it now. I didn't support any mandatory minimums. I didn't support more money to build state prisons. I was against it. You should be building rehab centers and not prisons. These aren't excuses, they're just facts. I supported the bill. I will accept responsibility for what went right, but I will also accept responsibility for what went wrong. But folks, in 1994, instead of being able to go and correct what we learned wasn't working, we lost the majority. We lost the majority in the Congress. And with that, the ability to make the bill better. As often the case, well-intended legislation sometimes has unintended consequences. Now we have to deal with the problems we have today. That's why I was proud to work alongside Barack. I don't say President Obama. I don't want to get confused with the other president. You know what I mean? I don't want to say the president. So he's my buddy. I don't call him Barack publicly, but President Obama. I was happy to work alongside of him to help reduce the federal prison population by 38,000 people when we were in office. That's why I proposed a comprehensive criminal package in this campaign. It begins with passing the Safe Justice Act from a congressman from the state of Virginia. But my plan goes further. We met and he agrees it should. No mandatory minimums, period. The end, which I've tried before, the end of private prisons. The end of private prison funding. Additional funding for drug courts. I had proposed initially $400 million for drug courts. They wiped it out. Bail reform. No one should be in jail because they can't meet the minimum bail requirement. No juveniles at all in adult prisons. Mandatory treatment, not jail, for those with drug addiction. Decriminalizing marijuana, automatically expunging records for marijuana convictions. Job training. Job training and education while you're in prison. In prison. All we do is put people on, warehouse them, and they learn to be better criminals. One thing everybody has in common in prison, the 2 most likely things, they're not based on race. You know what they're based on? You can't read, and your mother was a victim of abuse, which is a learned behavior. Well, folks, automatic restoration of all your voting rights, access to Pell Grants, once a sentence is served. That's how we prevent and decrease recidivism. Right now, we give somebody $25 and a bus ticket, and they have no access to programs they need to come out. That has to change. I believe my criminal justice reform package is as strong or stronger than anyone else's, than anyone has proposed. But I'm always open to new ideas because now you constantly learn. Plenty of others have attacked and will continue to attack. But look, the fact of the matter is, I'm not beholden to banks. I supported the bankruptcy bill because I believe taking a very bad bill, which is going to pass overwhelmingly, make it better, made sense. What happened? We provided a safe harbor for anybody under $50,000 making it. they could still declare bankruptcy for whatever reason. I provided for the fact that in bankruptcy, support payments, alimony payments went to the front. That's why those organizations supported me in supporting the bill. With regard to trade, I don't believe there's any stronger voice in the United States Congress or in politics today for working people than I have been. And we better wake up and realize either we begin to set the rules of the world for trade or China will write the rules for us, to our great detriment. Recent attacks on a woman's right to keep her personal decisions between health decisions between she and her doctor are offensive to me. And I will move to codify Roe v. Wade if the court strikes it down. I voted to give authority to Bush what turned into an Iraq war. But it didn't stop President Obama from within the first month turning to me to handle Iraq once we took an office, giving me the responsibility to coordinate all the agencies to bring home 150,000 combat troops from Iraq, including my son, who spent a year there. I don't believe there's anyone in this race more prepared to lead the world today than me. That sounds like I'm bragging, but it's what I truly believe because I've been engaged in it my whole career. Look, the central problem we have right now is an erratic president who embraces dictators and tyrants like Putin and Kim Jong-un, but abandons and pokes his finger in the eye of our allies and is shredding our most valuable alliances. I can fix that problem. I have done it before. And look, if you look at the issues I've been attacked on, nearly every one of them somehow has something to do with before 2008. As if my opponents want to believe I served from 1972 to 2008 and then took a hiatus the next 8 years. They don't want to talk much about my time as Vice President of the United States. It was the honor of my lifetime to serve with a man who I believe is a great president, a historic figure, and most important to me, a close friend. I was vetted by he and 10 serious lawyers he appointed to go back and to look at every single thing in my background, from finances to anything I had done, everything. And he selected me. I'll take his judgment about my record, my character, my ability to handle a job over anyone else's. I know there are many who want this campaign to be about my past, not theirs, my past. I get it. That's the game. But this isn't a game. Every one of you, no matter who you're for, know in your bones this election is different. Not because I'm running. This election is different. If we do not defeat Donald Trump, the character of this nation will be fundamentally and forever altered. Folks, I'm determined to make this election about America's future, about the issues that are right in front of us, not the ones that are behind us. I believe we should protect. And by the way, we have real differences about how to deal with the future, and that's legitimate. I believe what we should do, we have to improve Obamacare and add a public option, not throw it out. A number of the folks that I'm running want to get rid of it and start all over with something new. I don't. We don't have time. I believe the key to immigration is to deal with the root cause of the problem. Why are people coming to the border? That's why I put together a bipartisan approach, providing $700 million in support programs that I put together and to oversaw in Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. The same program Trump just got rid of, that actually, when we were doing it, slowed migration significantly. I believe we can and must deal with the existential threat posed by climate change. The next president must lead not only here, but the world. We're responsible for 15% of the problem, the world for 85%. How do you get this done if we do everything correct without engaging the world and not rejoining the Paris Climate Accord? I will do that. I believe we must repair the damage Trump has done, embracing autocrats and dictators, and once again lead the world by the example, not the example of our power, but the power of our example. Why have people followed us? And I believe we have to rebuild the backbone of this nation. Because folks, Wall Street did not build America. You did. Working people given half a chance did. And folks, I believe we have to take a stand against this rising tide of hate. And it really is. You saw it, especially neo-Nazis and white supremacists. A lot of you are involved, a lot of you, if you're old enough, were on the other side of this here in South Carolina a long time ago. Guess what happened? Did you ever think you'd see in a town like Charlottesville in 1917 people coming out of fields carrying torches, their veins bulging, hate in their voices, committing the same and repeating the same anti-Semitic bile that was heard in the streets of Germany? I mean, the same thing, accompanied by white supremacists and the Ku Klux Klan. And when asked, the president said, when they were met with resistance, he said, "What do you think?" And they said, "They're really fine people on both sides." No president has ever said anything like that. Really. And folks, yes, I believe we have to work across the aisle to find common ground to unify this country. I know that some of my opponents think that's delusional and naive. I don't. For all our problems, I have to say to you, if we can't find some common ground, there's really no answer. But the public is ready. They are ready. They've had enough of this hate. I have to say, I've never been more optimistic about the nation's future. And one of the reasons is because of the perspective gained over my years of public service. When I think back to 1968, I told you about my city in flames when I was a public defender. I see the images, you remember. I see the images of the East Side and 3rd Street Bridge in flames, standing at an Amtrak station. But I also think about the fact that I was standing in the same place almost 40 years later, in January of 2009, waiting for the first African-American ever elected president of the United States to pick me up and take me on a 108-mile ride to Washington, D.C. to be sworn in as his vice president. Don't tell me things cannot change. You know, it's funny. When I talk about the Obama years, my opponents talk about it as ancient history. When others talk about something I said in the 70s, they talk about it like yesterday. Kind of strange, isn't it? I know the history of this country. I'm amazed how far we come, but I know how much further we have to go and what we're capable of doing. And we can get there together. It gives me strength to know that we can defeat Donald Trump, and when we do, once again, we can be put on a path of dignity and honor and decency. And so, folks, it's time to remember who we are. This is the United States of America. We have never, ever, ever failed to do something when we've made a decision together. So together, we will change this. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Where am I going?